Hello everyone, I'm Nabeel Ramji, I'm the CEO of Pedesting, and welcome to the Pedesting Podcast, a podcast all about accessibility and universal design. I'm pleased to be joined by Benjamin Shinewald, the CEO and President of BOMA Canada. Thank you so much for joining me today, Benjamin.
It's my sincere pleasure and honor, Nabeel. We've known each other for quite a few years now, and I'm delighted to join you on your podcast.
Thank you so much. So I would love to get started by, how you've been with BOMA Canada for quite a while. Had a front row seat to the commercial real estate industry. So what are the few things that property owners are now thinking about that they never thought about 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I assume that you're talking about the way that owner managers of commercial real estate focus on accessibility as a priority in the management of their buildings. Um,
All things that never get were important to the industry doesn't have to be accessibility focused, but what are some of the kind of emerging trends that you see
sure,
in the industry?
sure. I mean, so I guess before we move to more of the accessibility discussion, though that is one of the things that owner managers are talking about a lot these days. Also on the agenda, sustainability remains important. Technology remains important. Return to work and return to the office is still important. And one of the things that BOMA Canada is working on right now is trying to advance an agenda around downtown revitalization and worries that Canada's downtowns from coast to coast to coast, big cities and even very small cities have challenges in the downtown cores. And part of that is connected to return to work for sure. Training the new generation to be owner managers and property managers and building operators. You know, we're an industry that's hidden in plain sight, and we're an industry that's retiring at a rapid pace. So finding people to fill these specialized jobs, lots and lots and lots on the agenda, and that's not even counting macroeconomics and global trends and so forth.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, one of the things we focus at possessing, how do you contribute to the vibrancy of downtown core? It's such a vital component to city building. So, I kind of touched on that already in the conversation, how BOMA measures, building performance, and if now, we see that shift from, being focused on environmental factors, but what other factors that are part of that conversation now? Is it user experience? Is it wellness? What are the other components growing performance?
Sure, sure, sure. So I would say, strictly speaking, in a narrow way, building performance is about the core operations of a commercial building, office, multi-unit residential, light industrial, retail, whatever. It's about making sure that the technology and mechanics and the structure itself is performing in an optimal way. So, small example, like many offices, this office here has a sensor in the ceiling, and if I sit still for long enough, or if I go out to lunch, the lights turn off. And if I return, they turn back on. It is a little motion sensor, right? So that's a small example of building performance, because the sensor that costs $5 or whatever allows the building to consume energy in a more efficient way than leaving them on all day, the lights on all day, or than having a switch, which maybe I forget to turn off or I get distracted and it's on all night or whatever. So really performance is about HVAC. It's about elevator. It's about the shell of the building being airtight, so that you're heating the building. You're not sending warm air outside into the cold Toronto or Edmonton winter, and vice versa in the summertime. And that is critical, because that's how you, just the same way that a factory needs to be efficient, or a farm needs to be efficient, or oil and gas needs to be efficient, or retail needs to be efficient. So too do building operations. Critical, critical. Layered on top of that, though, is a more nuanced, and I might say sophisticated or even enlightened view that there are other factors in a building which will drive its performance, or certainly drive up rents. And all things being equal, when you drive up revenue or you drive down expense, you increase the asset value of the building. And among those things are things like accessibility. A bit of a newcomer to the conversation after 5 or 10 years. Long way to go for the industry, but we're recognizing more and more how important it is to, on a moral basis and on a business basis.
Now that's great. Thank Benjamin. If kind of ties into my next question, actually, when you're in conversation with property managers, development, developers, how that mindset happening from accessibility as a core requirement versus accessibility being, a business advantage or economic benefits of accessibility. Have you seen that mindset, or what does that shift looking like from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nabeel. We're seeing a big shift, and we're seeing a big recognition on the part of owner managers of commercial real estate that accessibility is important, frankly, in as a consideration and as a deliverable in their work. It's a big shift. However, I don't want to suggest that the industry is remotely mature in this area. It's not. And there's still lots and lots of owner managers, big and small, sophisticated and less sophisticated, who have not heard about this enough, have not heard about this at all, are not thinking it through. So if I look back to where we were, for instance, when I met you, I think we met, at a Rick Hansen Foundation conference in Toronto at Mars, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Several,
I can't believe that was almost 5 years ago, right before COVID. Hard, hard to believe it being that long ago.
100%, 100%. And so like, go back, go back 15 years, zero conversation, not happening. Go back 5 years to when you and I met at the Rick Hansen Foundation conference. Everyone, everywhere. Real estate people were there. There were sessions on commercial real estate being given by BOMA members, by members of the Building Owners and Managers Association that I'm honored to lead. And I think there was a humility that people knew they didn't know very much about it, but there was also an earnestness in trying to do more. And there are, I kind of categorize the things that owner managers can do into two kind of buckets. You could call one the easy and one the hard. But I don't only mean easy and hard. What I mean is, in my building here in downtown Toronto, as a result of COVID, actually, they installed motion sensitive door openers for the men's and ladies room in the hallway down the hall from my office. That had the added benefit of enabling people who have difficulty opening the doors for one reason or another to enter the washroom. So that's easy. But when you go into the washroom, and I'm not picking on my landlord, this is a representative of the whole challenge that we face. It's a smaller washroom, and there's no handicap accessible stall or sink in the washroom. Um, and I believe there is one on the ground floor, which is, better than nothing. It's really critically better than nothing, but it's still not nice that somebody who is in need of that facility has to go down, in my case, 10 flights by elevator when everybody else can just go here locally. It's an added burden to somebody who already faces more than their fair share of burdens. I use the example of the washroom partly because I know washrooms are really, really important to the disabled community, maybe the most important, but also because unlike your home or mine, uh, in a commercial building, you can't just renovate the washroom the way you want to in a private single family home or even a condo. There is a stack, there is a footprint, stuff is literally set in stone. And so it is not impossible, but really hard to expand the footprint of the washroom, and that makes these things very hard. So in the commercial environment, there are easy things we can do. Uh, uh, the example I gave of the motion sensitive door opener, and hard things we can do, expanding the footprint of a washroom, which could cost millions in a building.
No, thank you for highlighting some valuable examples. And yes, like the accessible washroom example that you used is the same case in our office building where the accessible washroom is on the second floor. And for in Calgary, because we have this network called Plus the Team, sometimes I would go to the ground level and then come back up. So that's another layer of complexity where not just going down, going down and going up. So, but it's part of my daily routine, so I'm kind of used to it now, but like I said, very hard to make changes in commercial buildings. And so, I guess maybe you might have already answered it in your question and the answer previously, but what do you think of the hardest part of making buildings, truly inclusive? Is it the construction cycle? Is it the building structures? What do you think is the most difficult part?
Great question. I would say there are two aspects that are the most difficult. One I just talked about. An existing building can be extremely difficult to retrofit and extremely expensive to retrofit to a truly accessible standard. I'm not saying it's an excuse or whatever, but it's true. It is really, really hard. So that's one thing that I would say is a big challenge. I said the other thing that's a big challenge, though, equally big challenge, and it goes back to one of your first questions, is just building awareness. When owner managers are building new buildings, and that is one area where I think new construction, which I think often is overrated in its solutions, but in that case, new construction can go a long way to keep these things in mind from the beginning, or owner managers of existing real estate, just to bring up its profile. And I really believe that there's a long way to go, but we have begun in having that conversation and having services like Pedesting and others being able to come into the planning process of a new construction or a retrofit, or even maybe a modest retrofit, and provide expert advice. And I really also, I'll add that I think now is the time to do it. And I mean, that's a cliche, but I don't only mean now is the time because it's always now is the time. I mean, now is the time because we're probably hitting a moment around now of peak disability with the silver tsunami. As people get older, disability tends to rise. I look at my own father, who is disabled, but wouldn't call him self-disabled because there's a I don't know, stigma or a There's just not an awareness that disabled is often somebody else, even though all of us, or almost all of us, are or will be disabled temporarily or permanently at some point in our lives. So, the baby boomers are retiring, the younger than baby boomers are retiring. You look around at the number of people who will be in mobility assisted, the canes, wheelchairs, scooters, but also, low vision is going to become an issue as you get older, your vision gets worse, auditory issues, and even an awareness, I think, around mental health helps this conversation. And so I'm hopeful that every year will come closer and closer, and I'm always in awe of the patience of the disabled community. That is a community that does not that has every right to say we've waited long enough, but it is, for better or for worse, a process.
Thank you, those words mean a lot to me. A couple of thoughts that strike me right away. One is when we first met 5 years ago, the point Benjamin, Stats Canada published some stats on people in Canada who have disabilities. Back then it was 15%. And now it's almost up to 28%. So it's almost doubled in the last 5 years. So we really seeing it play out. The second thing is I'm so grateful for champions like Rick Hansen who have been fighting the fight for 3 decades, for decades. For it's nice to see that all his hard work is now coming to light and with more awareness in the industry. So thank you for being part of that conversation. So I kind of want to set a better focus where, there's more pressure for buildings to do more and more and more. So, over the last few years, you have, things like sustainability, equity, safety, adapt, adaptability. So from your perspective, how are owners balancing these priorities while maintaining a long-term value of real estate?
Yeah, I think it's a very timely question because I think, I do look at accessibility as kind of the junior, the little brother or little sister of sustainability. And what I mean by that is that sustainability is similar to accessibility in the sense that it's not a problem that you solve today. It's not a problem that you ever solve. And it's not a problem that any one party or industry or group can solve. Instead, each of us, as individuals, as companies, as communities, as countries, need to do our part to contribute to the solution towards, climate change and carbon reduction and net zero. And I look at the conversation we're having right now around accessibility. That's the same way. Nabeel, you can't solve it. I can't solve it. It is a mega problem that our grandchildren one day will still be working on, but we each have a role to play. It's not for us to desist from the work, nor are we obligated to complete it. We just have to do our best. All that being said, there's a changing political climate in Canada, in the States, in other countries. We can see a different emphasis on sustainability right now. And, one of the things about sustainability in commercial real estate is that overwhelmingly a more sustainable building is a better operating building, a more efficient building, and therefore has higher asset value. So there is a straight line correlation causation between a more sustainable building and a more profitable one, even though there is a move more towards pure business than sustainability. And I'm nervous about making sure that we keep at it on both the sustainability side and uh, the accessibility side, because it is still good for business at the end of the day. We ought to drive this forward, Nabeel, because it is for two reasons. It is good for business. Okay. If you and I, or you or I, can have a beer in a restaurant, irrespective of our ability or disability, buy a nice new pink sweater that you're wearing, go to the office, pick up a bag of tomatoes at the grocery store on the way home, work in the warehouse at a factory, whatever. Those are good things for business, and good things for the economy. But there's also a moral component. There's a moral component that we must remember, that it's not only about nickels and dimes, it's also about nickels and dimes. And we've got to build, and build is a good word in this case, a society that is accessible to all, full stop.
Now, those are some powerful words, Benjamin, and thank you for saying it because I often, sometimes, I feel quite anxious or isolated or going out to all the places that you described. And the thing that we say about with the opportunity with Pedesting if we want to increase the representation of people out and about because we don't see the people that out and about that mirrors the percentage of the population. So we find that there's a big mismatch between the stats and people who go out and about. So but what makes me so excited is I consider BOMA best to be a key industry standard practice and how it's creating amazing frameworks about user experience. So maybe you can touch on BOMA Canada's partnership with the Cancer Foundation and all the great work that you're doing with the cancer.
Sure, sure, sure. So I've been honored to be a member of the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification Advisory Board for many years now. And we've had a partnership with the Rick Hansen Foundation for a long time. In fact, Rick joined us as a keynote speaker at BOMX 2019 in St. John's, Newfoundland, right before COVID. And we've been allies and partners ever since. And basically, one of their former staffers knocked on my door. I'm still in touch with her. She's wonderful, and pitched a partnership. And on the spot, I said yes. I didn't need to think about it. It wasn't that I was so clairvoyant or such a great leader. It was like, yes, we should be working on this. Of course. Why haven't we already? And so what we've done with the Rick Hansen Foundation accessibility certification is we've given them a platform where they can advance their mission of driving accessibility forward to their certification program, which is kind of like BOMA Best, which is our certification program for the sustainability or smart technology systems in the operations of commercial buildings. And so they have one that looks at accessibility. Of course, they're the experts there. And so we promoted their program. We've done thought leadership with them for BOMA members who are a key stakeholder group. They give out awards at our conference every year, and then there's a whole bunch, and we give advice to them, and they give advice to us. And we've, with their blessing, brought in some accessibility content from their certification into ours. Um, in doing so, we can drive forward our joint mission. I'll also say, I'm proud to say, Nabeel, that from the beginning, we took the principled decision that this is not something where we wanted to make a buck off of. So we don't charge them anything. I think we do some cost recovery. I'm not even sure about that. But we don't say, okay, here's the fee for presenting awards, or here's the fee for doing thought leadership pieces, the way we might to some third-party provider in the private sector, because we don't want to make money off the disabled community and the disabled cause. We want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Now that's great. You know, over 5 years, I've seen the conversation get louder and louder, and the awareness amongst the industry have increased thanks to the recent tie in the BOMA Best 4.0. Maybe for those who are watching that might not be familiar, maybe you can talk briefly about the buildings without barriers award program every year.
Sure, yeah, I touched on it a second ago. The Buildings Without Barriers Awards program is a program that the Rick Hansen Foundation runs. And I hope you can hear me okay, because I'm hearing a beeping in my ear once in a while. I hope the battery is not going bad. It's okay?
Yeah, it's okay, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So the Building Without Barriers Challenge is a challenge to BOMA members. And again, these are the people, the women and men who either own or property manage commercial real estate to drive the most accessible buildings in Canada year over year. Our members are very, very competitive. They like to win. They like to benchmark against their peers. And so basically the Rick Hansen Foundation runs this program, which I think you have to have a minimum number of buildings in per company, I believe. And then the highest scoring buildings in the Rick Hansen Foundation accessibility certification win an award, which is given out at BOMEX, our conference, which this year, as we chatted before, I think coming on the air, is in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in the middle of September. And so we're happy to give that platform and to celebrate these BOMA members who are driving the accessibility agenda forward in a really crunchy, really meaningful way in their buildings.
Yeah, no, I have the pleasure to witness the award winners this past BOMA excellent Cooper, and it was great to see Great West Life, Realty, getting I have 14 buildings participate in the town, so that was phenomenal to see. So I guess
I'm going to pass this podcast on to our friends at GWL Realty Advisors after, because you're right, they did an amazing job and they deserve a lot of props.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I kind of want to change the conversation about innovation because you talked about that a little bit already. With the rise of technology that's happening, a lot of real estate companies are looking at multiple solutions. But when it comes to solutions that make an impact on the disabled community, what to give the real estate owners or operators how to evaluate some of these technology solutions?
Yeah, so great question. I would say two things that that BOMA members and property managers should do to learn about how to apply technology in their buildings to drive accessibility forward. One thing that they should do is talk to the community. There's occasionally this sense of people who are not disabled that, oh, I meet code, or, oh, I understand, I can take a look at a ramp and understand that that's a working ramp, even though, as I learned through the Rick Hansen Foundation, when I did a simulation of being in a wheelchair and being blind, how quickly you can't unlearn that not all ramps are created equal, if I can put it that way, as I'm sure you would know better than me, Nabeel. So talk to the community, hire consultants, educate yourself. Don't just do it thinking that it'll work for the disabled community because you have the best of intentions. The second thing I would say, though, and this is actually something that is often overlooked, is hire disabled people. As you mentioned a few minutes ago, Nabeel, the disabled community is underrepresented in the workforce. It makes it a double burden for a community that's already disadvantaged. And I am embarrassed to say that in the 3,500, give or take, BOMA members across the country, and I don't know all of them, but I am unaware of a single disabled person in the membership. There probably is somewhere. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody who I know, but I think it's horrible. But I also know that it's not unusual. That's not unusual. And so, if you really want to bring disability awareness and let's call it what it is, customer service to this community, go out and make sure you hire the people who you're serving as well.
No, valuable point, man. And maybe I can become a first BOMA member. Oh, I've been thinking about it for a while, so I might be the first.
The doors are wide open to you, wide open.
So we're building on this one to improve the user experience and the property, but don't know where to begin. What would be your advice as to the first step? You maybe talked about talking to people in the community, but is there anything else that's easy for them to get engaged, get started?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I would say, talk to the community, hire the consultants. You do the same thing for structural engineering. You do the same thing for elevator refurbishment. Why not do the same thing for accessibility as well? And then use it as an opportunity to learn more, be humble, and understand just how much of an impact we can have. Very often, if you think these things through from the beginning, the cost of making the changes can be negligible. It can even be positive. You might save money, and in the end, not only do you have negligible or negative costs, but you actually have a building that all of a sudden has a clientele that is expanded from what it once was before. So be curious and be humble.
Now that's a great perspective, Benjamin. And I believe a couple of years ago, I believe an architecture firm is called AVE. CMA would be there building construction study with the Canton Foundation, and they basically indicated the developer to build the Canton goal is maybe 1%. So the studies out there that describe exactly what you were saying. So the real economic behind, research behind the I have two more questions for you. First one is, building needs and trust from people who use them. This doesn't need to just operate efficiently, but it needs to be built for people in mind. How does building and trust, from your experience in talking, you know?
It's a terrific question. How does a building earn trust? Um, well, one is to be welcoming to the disabled community and all other communities too, right? Um, uh, so one is by the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as the expression goes. The proof's in the pudding. So show that you are making an effort. I don't want to speak for your community. I never would. It's not for me to do that. But my sense is that in many communities, people just at least want to see you making an effort. Because if you aren't making an effort, it's just aggravating to no end. So maybe you don't have, full accessibility in your building, but put it in your budgets and every year do some project, have a long capital plan. What's the highest and best use of your funds? Don't bother. Tell you a crazy little anecdote. It's a private house on my block. These people completely renovated this house. I live in a normal middle class neighborhood, and there's an elevator in the house. But to get to the ground floor, you've got to climb a flight of stairs. It's bananas. The elevator can't be used by somebody in a wheelchair. So begin by thinking through the basics, and think about, how much you can do, how fast you can do it, but also what the highest value is. If there is literally a stumbling block to get into a building, unusual in an office building, but it can happen, start there. There's no point in having an accessible washroom if the person can't enter the front door in the first place.
I come laughing at being situation where that happens. That's something to keep in mind. We wrap up, I kind of want to talk about, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, there's a lot more work to do. The next generation might be working on some of these, sustainability and accessibility aspects, but in 10 to 20 years from now, when you look at, the commercial real estate industry, what will you think the industry could be known for? Not only in terms of performance, but how they serve people every day who use these spaces.
Yeah, look, I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full guy, but I'm also realistic. We don't live in a world that glass half empty. We don't live in a world that is accessible, that is as accessible as possible. We're not even close to that. The Rick Hansen Foundation slogan of everyone, everywhere is amazing. And we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Not even close. You know that better than me. The glass half full is this is a conversation that didn't happen 10 years ago. Or it happened in specialist communities. It happened in the disabled community and maybe here and there. But there are now people who are working on it, who are talking about it, who are driving it to the center of the social conversation in a way that was unthinkable a few years ago. I think that's progress. And so I do believe that, the next generation will walk or wheel or whatever you want to say their way into a future that is better for them. But I think that in 500 years from now, people will still be talking about this because maybe every building at that point will be accessible. And then the issue will become, yeah, but what about mountain climbing? Or what about this? Or what about that? And so it's going to be a never ending road, but one that we should all be enthusiastic about following.
No, that's fantastic, and I do want to personally say, thank you for being part of the conversation and participating in the wonderful conversation and helping me find the light why today is the time why we all need to come together to improve how we interact with the space and make it better for everybody. So I really like to say thank you for your time and thank you for all your efforts, and I'm excited to see how things will evolve over the next year to 3, 5 years. So thank you, Benjamin, for everything that you and BOMA Canada is doing to elevate this conversation. So thank you, my friend.
It's my pleasure, Nabeel. Tell you what, in 5 years, in June 2030, have me back on your podcast and let's talk about the progress we've made because of your leadership as we approach the 2030s.
I would love that. Well, take care, my friend, and we will chat soon.
Be well. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, bye.